What's for dinner? Apple pork chops. If you're looking for the perfect Sunday dinner, this apple pork chops recipe is it. And it's the perfect way to use up some of those apples now that apples are in season. I got this recipe from my friend Mary at Mary's Nest on YouTube, and I've tried a lot of her recipes and this one did not disappoint. Me and my husband absolutely loved it. If you're not familiar with Mary at Mary's Nest on YouTube, I will link her channel in the description box below. She has a traditional foods kitchen and she teaches how to make nutrient dense foods. Foods that she says might have been made by the original pioneers. Sourdough and your own vinegars and bone broth and more. So I will link her in the description box and you have to go over and be sure and check her out. And before we get into it, this video is sponsored by Apron Diva. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. Okay, let's make some apple pork chops. This dish is going to be absolutely delicious. I'm going to have the pork chops with fried apples. I'm going to make some German potato salad as well as some sauteed kale. I'm starting out with 4 center cut chops, boneless. Mary uses bone-in chops, but I don't have bone-in, so I'm using what I've got. And then I season the chops on one side with a little bit of salt and cracked black pepper. And then I put 3 tablespoons of butter in this cast iron skillet so that I can brown the chops on both sides. And while the one side is browning, I add seasoning to the other side. Again, a little salt and cracked black pepper. One of the things that happens when I'm using this particular pan is that sometimes the meat will stick. So I needed to use my spatula just to kind of loosen it from the bottom. And I turn it over from time to time just to make sure it's browning evenly. Once they're evenly browned, I take them out of the pan and set them aside on a clean plate. Now it's time to work on those onions. I'm going to thinly slice them. And then I'm going to drop them in the pan and just let them start to brown and to caramelize. I'm going to stir them around in the skillet and scrape up all the bits of goodness from the bottom. Once the onions are cooked through and caramelized, I'm going to make a little bed of the onions in the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to return my chops to the pan and then pour in 2 cups of apple cider. And I just want enough apple cider to just barely come to the top of the chops. And I let that come to a simmer. The chops will simmer for about an hour. While the chops are simmering, I'm going to get started on the German potato salad. I like to wash my potatoes first because while I'm peeling the potatoes, my hand is on the skin and on the meat of the potato. So I like to give them a good scrubbing and then I peel them. And I'll put a pot of water on the stove so that it can heat up while I'm working on the potatoes. And I just roughly cut the potatoes. I cut them into quarters and then into quarters and then into quarters again. I like them to be in bite-sized pieces. Once I've got that done, I drop the potatoes in the boiling water and then I add my salt. And the thing I like about German potato salad is that lovely vinegary dressing. So let's get that started. I'm going to use this mason jar as my shaker. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt to the jar, a half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, 2 teaspoons of sugar, 1/2 cup of apple cider vinegar. And this is apple cider vinegar that I made myself using my apple scraps. I learned that from Mary at Mary's Nest. I'll link that video below. And then I add a tablespoon of grainy mustard. And this is just a tablespoon of stone ground mustard that I picked up at Walmart. And I give this a good whisk just to try to make sure all of those ingredients are mixed together. And then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of olive oil and give it a really good shake. Don't worry if you don't catch all the ingredients because I'm going to link you to Mary's website which shows all the ingredients that are needed. Let's pour on the dressing. And once the dressing is on, we're going to add 1 bunch of green onions which we've already sliced up, 4 slices of bacon, which I cooked earlier and then chopped up pretty fine. And we're going to give that a good stir. I like my German potato salad hot, so I'm going to set it in the oven so it can keep warm while I work on the rest of the meal. The chops have been simmering for about an hour, so I'm going to get them out and put them on a clean plate and get ready to work on those apples. After I remove the chops, I'm going to let the sauce cook down just a little bit, just to thicken, and then I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of butter and stir that around until it's nicely incorporated. And once that's done, I'm going to add my apples. I peeled, quartered, and roughly cut my apples off camera. It'll probably take about 10 minutes until the apples are tender. Then I'll get them off the heat, set it aside while I work on my sauteed kale. And this is kale that I actually grew in my garden. I threw it in with just a little bit of olive oil to begin to saute it. And one thing I often do is start out with a pan that's too small. So I had to swap skillets. And then once I did that, I just added a little bit of seasoning to the kale, a little dried chopped onion, and some garlic powder. And I let that cook for about 10 minutes. Then it was time to plate it up. I think the next time I cook this kale, I'll make sure I remove the stems first. Those fried apples taste absolutely delicious, and it makes me think of the apples that I get at Bob Evans. What's your idea of the perfect Sunday dinner? Tell me in the comment section below. I'd love to know. Maybe someone else out there is looking for just the dinner that you described.